I never imagined that a simple resignation email would lead to the complete downfall of my former company. But here we are. It all started 3 years ago when I joined a mid-sized software development firm that had built a solid reputation in our industry. With about 80 employees, the company was known for delivering high-quality work, albeit under relentless deadlines. At first, I was thrilled. The pay was good, the projects were engaging, and I was learning a lot. My direct supervisor seemed reasonable, and the CEO had a habit of strolling through our department, flashing thumbs-ups and asking how things were going. It felt like a promising place to grow. But within 6 months, the cracks in the company's foundation became impossible to ignore. Our development team was severely understaffed, yet the workload kept piling up. When a senior developer left, instead of hiring a replacement, management simply divided his responsibilities among the rest of us. Then another left, and the same thing happened again. My 40-hour workweek stretched to 60, often creeping into 70-hour marathons during crunch periods. It's just temporary, my supervisor assured us. We're hiring soon. They never did. Despite the grueling conditions, I stayed. During this time, I met the woman who would become my wife. She worked in marketing and understood the pressures of a toxic work environment all too well. We would vent to each other over dinner, exchanging stories of absurd demands and sleepless nights. Even so, life had its bright spots. Last year, I proposed, and we set our wedding date for early summer. 6 months in advance, I submitted my time-off request. 3 weeks, 2 for the wedding and honeymoon in Greece, plus an extra week to settle back in. My supervisor begrudgingly approved it, but reminded me to tie up all loose ends before I left. As the wedding approached, the pressure at work escalated. A major client had signed on for a complete overhaul of their system, and the timeline was aggressive. To my dismay, I was assigned as the lead developer. I protested, pointing out my upcoming absence, but the CEO dismissed my concerns. "You're the best person for this," he told me. "We're counting on you. But don't worry, we'll manage while you're gone." That assurance lasted exactly 2 weeks. Just days before my wedding, my supervisor called me into his office. He avoided eye contact as he spoke. "We need to talk about your time off," he said. "The project timeline has shifted, and we need you to be available during your honeymoon." I stared at him. "Available? What does that mean exactly?" "Just check your email daily, maybe join a call or 2. Nothing major." I reminded him that I'd be in remote areas of Greece, where internet access would be unreliable at best. He gave me a tight-lipped smile. "Then find better spots. This project can make or break our relationship with this client. Everyone needs to pull their weight." I left his office fuming. That evening, I told my fiancée, who was livid. "Start looking for another job now," she urged. But with wedding preparations in full swing, I put it off. "I'll deal with it after we get back," I promised her. The next day, the CEO himself called me while I was at the venue finalizing arrangements. There was no preamble, no small talk. "I understand you're hesitant about staying connected during your trip," he said. "But this isn't optional. We need you to check in daily and put in at least 4 hours of work each day. The client is pushing for updates, and no one understands the codebase like you do." "That's because you've never replaced the senior developers who left," I snapped, patience wearing thin. "And I've told you for months that we need to document the system better and cross-train the team." "That's not the issue right now," he interrupted. "The issue is that you're abandoning us at a critical time. I thought you were a team player. I put in my request 6 months ago. You approved it. Circumstances change. Business needs come first. That's the reality of the professional world." I took a slow breath. "I'm getting married in 3 days. I'll be on my honeymoon. I won't be working." A long silence stretched between us. Then, coldly, he said, "I suggest you think carefully about your future with this company." The threat was clear. The next morning, an email from HR landed in my inbox, requesting a pre-departure meeting. When I arrived, my supervisor, the CEO, and the HR director were waiting for me. "We wanted to clarify expectations," the HR director said smoothly. "Given the critical nature of the project, we're asking you to be available for work during your absence. If this isn't possible, we may need to reconsider your role on the team, and potentially your position with the company." I looked at them, the people who had drained every ounce of effort from me for 3 years while dangling empty promises of improvement. "Let me be clear," I said, voice steady. "I'm getting married. I'm going on my honeymoon. I will not be checking email, taking calls, or writing code during that time. If that's a problem, I'm happy to tender my resignation right now. The CEO leaned forward. No one's asking you to resign. We're asking you to be professional and fulfill your responsibilities to this company. Many people work during their honeymoons. It's not unusual. It's unusual to me, I replied. And to my fiancé, who expects me to be fully present for one of the most important moments of our lives. The meeting ended in a stalemate. They gave me until the end of the day to think about it. I didn't need that long. Back at my desk, I typed up my resignation letter. It was professional yet direct. I stated that I was resigning immediately due to the company's attempt to coerce me into working during my pre-approved honeymoon. I outlined the ongoing understaffing, overwork, and broken promises that had defined my time there. Before sending it, I forwarded myself copies of every relevant email. The approval of my time-off request, project timelines proving we were stretched too thin, my warnings about documentation, and the HR meeting invite. Then I hit send. Within an hour, my access was revoked. Security escorted me out of the building. My supervisor watched silently as I packed my things, his face a mixture of anger and panic. He knew exactly how much critical knowledge was walking out the door with me. The wedding was beautiful. The honeymoon was perfect. We swam in crystal-clear waters, indulged in incredible food, and never once checked our work emails. It was everything we had hoped for. When we returned, I discovered that my resignation email had gone viral. A colleague had shared it online, and it spread like wildfire. The company's toxic culture was exposed, and clients began pulling their contracts. Senior developers who had been holding on finally had enough and quit. Within months, the company was in free fall. The CEO, who once lectured me about business needs coming first, was now desperately trying to salvage a sinking ship. I, meanwhile, had moved on to a new job with a company that valued its employees. And I never once regretted my decision. Hundreds of messages flooded my LinkedIn and personal email. Somehow, my resignation letter had found its way to social media and gone viral. A former colleague had taken a screenshot and posted it on Twitter, anonymizing my name, but leaving enough details for those in the industry to recognize the company. It struck a nerve. Thousands of people shared similar experiences. Stories of employers encroaching on their personal time, of being overworked and understaffed, of being made to feel guilty for taking the time off they had rightfully earned. It wasn't just me. This was a pattern across the industry. Business journals picked up the story, industry blogs dissected it, and soon my former company was at the center of an internet firestorm, called out for its toxic work culture. While all of this was happening, 5 different companies reached out to me for interviews. They had recognized the firm from the details in my letter and wanted to bring me on board. Within 2 weeks, I had accepted a position at a company known for its commitment to work-life balance. The pay was better, the expectations were reasonable, and most importantly, they had a firm policy against disturbing employees during their time off. It felt like stepping into a completely different world, one where I wasn't expected to sacrifice my personal life for my job. Meanwhile, my former company was imploding. The client whose project I had been leading withdrew after hearing about the chaos. Other clients started asking questions, growing uneasy about the company's stability. Employees, already frustrated, began leaving in waves. First my former team members, then people from other departments. Desperate to salvage the company's reputation, the CEO made a public statement claiming they valued work-life balance and that the situation had been misrepresented. But no one believed him. Former employees came forward with their own horror stories, painting a picture of an organization that had long neglected its workers in pursuit of endless output. The backlash was unstoppable. 3 months after my resignation, I got a message from my former supervisor. We met for coffee, and he filled me in on what had happened. He, too, had left along with nearly 70% of the staff. The company had lost major clients, was struggling to stay afloat, and had been forced to downsize their office space. The CEO still doesn't get it, he told me, shaking his head. He thinks this is all because of your email, not the years of bad management that led to it. He's blaming social media instead of looking in the mirror. 6 months later, the company announced it was being acquired by a larger firm. It wasn't a triumphant merger. It was a fire sale, a desperate attempt to salvage whatever was left. Shortly after, the CEO stepped down, with rumors circulating that he had been pushed out by the board. Looking back, I never intended to cause such upheaval. All I wanted was to enjoy my wedding and honeymoon without work interruptions, something that should be a basic right for any employee. But my resignation email became a catalyst for something bigger. It exposed a toxic culture that had been festering beneath the surface for years, and once the truth was out, there was no containing it. My wife jokes that our honeymoon technically never ended since I never went back to that job. In a way, she's right. I set a boundary and refused to let my employer bully me into submission. I didn't anticipate the viral storm that followed, but I have no regrets. The new job isn't perfect, no job is, but the difference is stark. When I recently requested time off for our first anniversary trip, my manager simply smiled and said, "Have a great time. Don't even think about work while you're gone." That, more than anything, confirmed that I had made the right choice. As time passed, I received countless messages asking for updates, so I thought I'd clarify a few things. People often ask for a copy of my resignation email, but I'm not comfortable sharing the exact text, both for privacy reasons and because there's always a risk of legal complications. What I can say is that it wasn't an emotional outburst or a vindictive attack. It was factual and professional. I simply outlined the situation with my honeymoon, the long history of overwork, and my reasons for leaving immediately rather than serving out a notice period. Another common question is whether I leaked the email myself. I didn't. A colleague shared it internally, and from there, it spread to industry circles before hitting social media. I had no idea any of this was happening until I returned from Greece. As for legal threats, yes, there were some. The company initially sent a letter accusing me of violating my employment contract by sharing confidential information and failing to provide proper notice. But I hadn't disclosed anything confidential, and since they had immediately cut off my access and escorted me out, any argument about a notice period was moot. My new employer's legal team helped me draft a response, and I never heard from them again. I suspect they realized that pursuing it further would only invite more negative publicity. Do I feel guilty about the company's collapse? That's a complicated question. I never wanted anyone to suffer because of my actions, and I know many good people lost their jobs. But at the same time, the company had been mistreating employees for years. My email didn't cause their downfall. It just exposed the truth. Most of my former colleagues landed on their feet, and several even reached out to thank me for being the one who finally pushed back. The most common question I get, would I do it again? Without hesitation. Standing up for myself and protecting my time with my new wife was one of the best decisions I've ever made. The fact that it sparked a larger conversation about toxic work cultures is something I'm proud of, even if it wasn't my intention. Life has moved forward in the best way possible. My wife and I are planning to buy a house next year and talking about starting a family. My new job continues to respect my boundaries, and I've become much more selective about the companies I consider working for in the future. Now, I ask pointed questions about expectations, staffing, and time-off policies during interviews, because no job is worth sacrificing your personal life and relationships for. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's that companies that demand their employees put work above all else are usually hiding deeper problems. And no matter how irreplaceable you think you are, the truth is the company will survive without you. Or it won't, which only proves that the problems ran far deeper than one person taking their approved time off. The outpouring of support has been incredible. So many people have shared their own stories of pushing back against unfair workplace expectations, proving that change starts one boundary at a time.